Hi guys, welcome back to our second learning standard lesson. Our second standard is 5.6F, make inferences with text evidence. Do you remember what making an inference means? Okay, we're going to go ahead and find out. Okay, so again, this is the lesson plan that you should have in your packet. I highly suggest that you do the first two lessons before you go to the assessment. So we're going to get started with our inferencing lesson. Okay, so inferencing, what is it? Okay, so how do we infer? As good readers, guys, we're always inferring, and not just when we read. You use inferencing skills every day in your life, and sometimes you don't realize that you're doing it, but you are doing it. So, how do I infer? Okay, so you look for clues in a book, and this is not only in a book, it could be on a sign or just everyday life. And I'll give you some examples in a little bit, okay? So, I'm thinking, okay, you're thinking blank because of what? Okay, so when you infer, you use clues and then you use your own thinking, and that equals your inference. Um, you could say that inferencing is kind of like a guess, but not really. Um, an inference would require for you to really have text evidence, for you to have proof that what you're thinking is correct. So that's the difference between a guess and an inference, guys. Okay? So let's practice. What can you infer happened to this man? What could you say about the picture? So I want you to think about it. Well, um, it looks like he obviously fell down. And why do we think that he fell? What are your clues? Well, his bike is upside down, and I know that you don't ride a bike upside down, and that's you using your own thinking, your own background knowledge. Okay, what else are you thinking? What else are you noticing in the picture? I'm noticing that it's wet, and I know that when it's wet, I'm using my own thinking. I know that when it's wet outside or even in the hallway, you can slip and fall because water makes a surface slippery. Okay, and then I also noticed that he has an umbrella. That's your clue. Well, what about the umbrella? Now you're using your own thinking. Well, I know that you use umbrellas when it's raining outside, right? So now this is where you go to your inference. So based on your clues, based on your own thinking, I can infer that what? You're right. I can infer that he probably fell riding his bike because it's raining outside. You just made an inference. Good job. Okay, let's practice a little bit more. What can you infer about our friend? What could you say about how he's feeling? Okay, your clues are that he's probably happy. Some might say that he's angry. Okay, so we would write that there. And in the background, I noticed that it looks like he's probably in a classroom. So that's another clue. I know that when I'm in my classroom and the teacher probably calls me up for some exciting news, I would get just as excited as he is. So what do you infer? I can infer that he probably made a good grade on his test and he's celebrating it. Okay? So basically, guys, that is what inferencing is. You use your clues, you use your own thinking, and that is what equals an inference. Okay? Can you throw something out there and say, oh, the teacher made the boy angry? Is there any text evidence that would say that? Probably not. If you were to just say, oh, the man was going too fast and he fell off his bike. Well, he probably was going fast, but our evidence would be that the rain is probably what caused him to slip and fall because that's what we have text evidence from in the picture. Okay, so we are going to watch a quick inferencing video. Okay, and for this, you are going to need this activity. Again, right now, I just want you to listen. I don't just pay attention to what the vocabulary is telling you, and then we'll come back to this assignment.
Vocabulary. When you go by your friend's house to see if she's home, and the house is all dark, and you don't have your phone, she doesn't answer the knock. What could this be? She could be hiding in the dark. She could have moved to Greece, but those don't seem likely. So you take your best guess. She's probably just not home. No need to stress. When you take your best guess, you infer. Whether you observe the clues or you read them in the words, you reach conclusions from details or evidence. Clues that you see in the real world or sentences like Jasmine was cranky. She had bags beneath her eyes. Her head was droopy. She was yawning all the time. You infer she's tired, didn't get a good night's sleep. Jasmine's not a shepherd, but you think she needs to count sheep. She didn't tell you she's sleepy. She didn't have to say, cause the clues were like a sign that she was wearing on her face.
I read between the lines what you don't say when you tell me that you're coming my way. I read between the lines to infer the truth. I'ma take my best guess with you. I read between the lines what you don't say when you tell me that you're coming my way. I read between the lines to infer the truth. I'ma take my best guess with you.
It's your birthday and you are amped, but when you ask Jasmine to hang, she says she has plans. You glance in her backpack and hello, you see a flashlight and 2 bags of marshmallows. A little later, you overhear your friend Samantha ask Jasmine what time, but you don't catch the answer. And then she says, I won't tell. Jasmine, have trust. And then she sees you looking over and she starts to blush. So thinking through everything you observed, read between the lines, what can you infer? Maybe Jasmine's throwing a surprise party for you. The conversation that you overheard was a clue. And where could it be? You infer us at a campsite where you roast marshmallows and might need a flashlight that night. That leads you where you never been. And suddenly, and yeah, it's all your friends.
I read between the lines what you don't say when you tell me that you're coming my way. I read between the lines to infer the truth. I'ma take my best guess with you. I read between the lines what you don't say when you tell me that you're coming my way. I read between the lines to infer the truth. I'ma take my best guess with you.
Okay. So when you are inferencing, guys, you are technically reading between the lines. You are using your text evidence and you are using your own schema and you are figuring out what the author is trying to tell you. Okay? So in this assignment, you're going to read between the lines. You're going to read each passage and then respond to the question. Each question will ask you to make a logical inference based on the detail from the text. And then you will explain your answers by referencing the text. So this short little excerpt right here. Charlotte was pet sitting her uncle's pet boa constrictor. When she went to check on him the next morning, he was missing. There also seemed to be fewer hamsters in the next cage. Yeah. So Charlotte has she was pet sitting her uncle's boa constrictor. If you don't know what that is, guys, a boa constrictor is a type of snake. Sometimes you will come across words that you don't really know. So a good thing to do is now that, if you're at home and you have a device, you could Google it. Or if you have a dictionary, you could look it up in the dictionary just to see if it's there, because it's better to have like a close guess than to just guess and not know what we're talking about. Okay, so she was pet sitting a boa constrictor, a snake, and then she went to check on him the next morning and he was missing. That is not good. And then there seemed to be fewer hamsters in the cage. This whole situation is not good. So, what is the most likely conclusion? What do you think happened to the hamsters? So, you will write your answer in here. Okay? Make sure that you are using good handwriting so that I can read it when I grade your papers. Make sure that you're using capital letters and periods, because it's good to always practice good handwriting skills and grammar skills. Okay. So we used our own text evidence. We used our own schema, what we're thinking, and then that equals your inference. Okay. So I want you to do the rest of it by yourself, or with the parent, or if you have any older brothers or sisters that could help you. Okay. Before you make an inference, guys, make sure that you have text evidence. I need to see that you saw something and it made you think something, and that's how you made your inference. Okay. So go ahead and finish this assignment. If you're still not quite sure what inferencing is, go ahead and rewind this video, pause it, watch the vocabulary again, and then kind of really think about it again, and then come back to the activity. Okay, you can go ahead and stop now, and I will continue with the next lesson. Okay, guys, so for our next inferencing lesson, you are going to use the same story that you used yesterday. Okay, which is, nope, not that one, is the day the roulettes got their moxie back. If you have not finished reading the story, it's fine, because reading is a process and it's going to take you a while to understand what you are trying to read. So, yesterday, as you were reading, you were thinking about author's purpose, correct? Today, when you're reading, I want you to think of clues that you might find, clues that make you think, whoa, I think this is what's happening, because that is you practicing your inferencing as you are reading. Okay? And then, of course, you will continue to fill in your by annotating the text and just reread. Sometimes, guys, when things don't make sense, you have to reread because, like I said, we don't always remember everything that we read, and sometimes we forget what we read. I'm guilty of that too. I'm going to show you a little example of how you use inferencing in everyday situations. Sometimes you might come across a word that you don't know, and that requires for you to use your context clues and to also infer. So I'm going to read this little paragraph right here. And that is on page, if you want to turn to it and follow along, that is page 35. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because that's part of your job, but I am going to read this one little section so that we can practice inferencing when we're trying to figure out unfamiliar words. I imagine Ricky looking up at snow-capped mountains and sparkling skies, breathing in the smell of evergreens as his work crew turned trees into lumber and lumber into buildings. It almost made an 11-year-old weakling like me want to become a lumberjack. So I want you to think of what's happening in that paragraph. He says that he's imagining Ricky looking up at mountains. He's imagining him working, turning trees into lumber. Lumber is a fancy word for wood because wood comes from trees, right? And then lumber into buildings because every building requires lumber. So his brother is working in the snow, cutting trees, turning those trees into lumber, and then that lumber is being used for buildings. It almost made an 11-year-old weakling like me. Weakling. What root word do you hear in there? Weak. So what do you infer the word weakling means? So that's a perfect example of how you use inferencing as you are reading. Not only to figure out unfamiliar words, but also to better understand what you are reading in the text. Okay, so you're going to continue reading this story, and you are now looking for the author's purpose, which we talked about last week, and you are now also using inferencing skills as you are reading. Okay, if you read it all in one day and you're like, oh, now I understand, then go ahead and reread it. That is exactly why we are here, so that we can practice and that we can get better. Okay, and then you have your assessment, and this is an assessment to see if you understand inferencing. Remember that inferencing requires text evidence. You cannot choose an answer without having proof. So if on the question you chose B, make sure that you have something that made you think, and that is how you determined your inference. Okay? So make sure you're getting in the text. Make sure you're underlining important information. This is an example. Don't just underline what I'm doing. I'm giving you an example. And then make sure that you are reading the question, and then make sure that you are getting inside the answer choice and really thinking about what the answer is saying. And then finally, you choose your best answer based on your text evidence. Let me give you a hint. The best answer is going to have the most text evidence, just a FYI. Okay, so don't hesitate to comment in Google Classroom. Don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions, guys, and that concludes our inferencing lesson. I will see you in a few minutes with my last lesson of the summer school session.